Global warming is changing horror movies, and it's not likely to stop anytime soon. Hello, I'm Jenna. I have a master's degree in media and culture, and I've spent years studying horror media and video game cultures and living on this planet. 3 things I love to do, which is why I, like many, are concerned about the increasingly irreversible damage we're doing to the planet. What does that have to do with horror? Well, we're seeing the growth of an entirely new subgenre of horror, which isn't necessarily unusual. Genres are created and abandoned all the time in connection with societal changes. Like in the mid-20th century when every TV show and movie was a Western. Or last year when every movie was a superhero film. Right now, we're seeing the emergence of eco-horror, stories in which the planet itself is the monster. Historically, whenever nature is the antagonist in a horror movie, it usually manifests in one of 2 ways: animals or plants. For animals, it can be deadly predators like Jaws or Cujo, or seemingly manageable creatures run amok like the birds or arachnophobia. Which makes sense. It harkens back to humanity's innate fear of becoming the prey, fears which, despite our modern trappings, remain with us on an instinctual level. Fewer examples of deadly plants exist. The most notable ones are the invasion of the body snatchers in 1956 and again in 1978, and Little Shop of Horrors in 1960 and again in 1986. Except that in 3 of those 4 movies, the plants in question are actually aliens that just happen to look like plants. The Pod People Infiltrators and Audrey 2 are all extraterrestrial threats. So even though they're plant-like, they're not actually from Earth. That's a crucial distinction because until recently, we just assumed that if a plant were going to kill us, it must come from outer space. Our trust in our own planet was so intrinsic, we never even questioned it. Then in the mid-2000s, we started seeing the first rumbling of eco-horror, disaster stories where nature is threatening to wipe out all of humanity on Earth. Climate disaster epic The Day After Tomorrow came out in 2004, and The Last Winter, an Arctic ghost story that nobody saw, came out in 2006.
Tundra is barely frozen.
You know what else came out in 2006? An Inconvenient Truth. Climate change awareness had been on the rise since the early 1990s, but this documentary brought it to the attention of the general public. Since then, we've seen more and more eco-horror. The Happening, The Ruins, The Last of Us, The Girl with All the Gifts, and Annihilation all feature plants that are deadly, but they're also just plants. They're not aliens come to destroy us, they're a naturally evolved species from Earth that's targeting humans. Those last 3 are particularly interesting examples because they represent a less human-centric attitude. In The Last of Us, Joel can sacrifice Ellie for a cure that might save humanity from becoming fungal monstrosities, and he doesn't take it. The Girl with All the Gifts ends with a new human-plant hybrid species inheriting the Earth. And Annihilation is one long reminder that we don't have control over nature. We exist as an extension of it. Eco-horror represents the new existential dread we feel about the irreversible damage we've done to the planet, and the knowledge that Earth is increasingly less hospitable to us on a basic level. But the framing of them also represents a terrifyingly inaccurate perspective on climate change. This media suggests that nature itself is suddenly rearing up and attacking us, and therefore nothing can be done about it except die or evolve.
Do you know what symbiosis is?
We're basically powerless to stop it, which is a pretty defeatist attitude, especially for something as high stakes as the planet we live on. Of course, there is still room to make changes that don't involve becoming half plant. But in the meantime, we can still create, consume, and analyze eco-horror together here in the FiendZone. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to our sister site Vox's YouTube channel. They've got a ton of great videos, like this one, which explores how climate change is leading to an influx of chronic floods in New Jersey.